I'm Beth the Builder, and I'm gonna fix my janky ass fence. Alrighty, so first of all, if you like this, you should like and subscribe, and then check out links up here throughout my videos, as well as stuff in the description of how you can support me. So yeah, that's it. Do that if you want. That'd be super helpful. But just watching is also really, really useful to me. Alrighty, so my fence is probably 40, 50 years old. I don't exactly know. I know it's been painted in the last 15 years or so because my neighbor told me. So, but it's needed some assistance. It's needed some TLC. So I first looked into getting new pickets because some of them are broken or rotten or just in general need to be replaced because it's like a 40, 50 plus year old fence. And you cannot buy these pickets. So they are just a point, you know, very simple. You can see them. They're very simple. They don't have any decorative anything to them. You can't find them. I've looked all over the internet. I've searched different things. You cannot find these friggin' pickets. So what I came up with is I measured the boards and I just bought 1x4s because they're a standard thickness and a standard width, which is easy. So what you're gonna see me do first is I traced one of the existing pickets and then I just had to cut them all that way. And they're not perfect, okay? Because let's be real, it's a fence. No one's gonna be looking at it that closely because I just wasn't that worried about it, to be honest. I mean, if you're gonna paint a fence, you probably wanna repair it before you paint it, okay? Like, don't be an idiot. And then number two is if you have access to a pressure washer and you do not have to buy one, do that. So my mom has a pressure washer and that's what I planned on using. So this has already been pressure washed. You can watch me do it here. It's satisfying as fuck, okay? But if you don't have to buy one, because honestly, how often is anyone going to use a pressure washer? I mean, rarely. Because once you've pressure washed everything in your home, like in your area, what do you do with it? Just saying. And they're not cheap, you know, they're a few $100s. So I know you can rent them, so that's a thing to look into. I borrowed mine for free, and then all it cost me was some time and water. So I did it all in one day, and yeah, watch me do that. I wore a mask and goggles because my fence is old enough, and also I'm pregnant, that I didn't want to be inhaling / swallowing lead paint if it is lead paint, which I do not know if it is or not. I'm assuming it might be to one degree or another, but also just like ingesting paint in general, I've heard, I don't know if you've heard this, is not a great idea. I do not have any tips and tricks about pressure washing. It seems literally like idiot proof. You follow the directions, plug it in, plug in your hose, and you're kind of like off to the fucking races. That's it. I don't have anything to say about it. It is very satisfying, but you know, I'm not going to pressure wash anything I don't have to because I just don't really give a shit that much. Like, I know people will do their sidewalks and their siding and all kinds of other shit. I do not care about that. Okay, it's a stretch to get us to care about like any amount of lawn care, including just like mowing grass, because grass is stupid.
I grew up in a place where they told you what to chase, told you how to run the race. Every move was on the page, but I didn't like their way. Had to fight and misbehave, had to find a way to change, had to leave to find my way. Caught up in a daydream, I beat my mind up there almost daily. It's how I pass time, no opinions safely. It's how I understand what I want in this place, see. Cause everybody wanna tell you bad things, what could go wrong, what fame brings. But success is a finicky thing, and if you ain't sure, no, it'll never be. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down. I don't have to plan it, I can go change my fate. You won't understand it, all alone, that's okay. People I can't stand, man, they don't want me to change. Keep me where I'm standing.
this here fucking fancy ass white picket fence like we're in a fucking Hollywood movie. It's beautiful. You've totally watched me paint this fence now, and I got a paint sprayer because I think painting a fence, that's probably the only way to go unless you really like painting and wasting time doing that. You can get like a super straightforward, not fancy, not expensive one for under $100, and as long as you clean it, I haven't had any problems with mine. I've cleaned it and then reused it, and I've had no problems with it. So fingers crossed that it stays that way, because I would love to keep paint spraying things. It is satisfying as hell. Basically, this project is just painting / repairing a fence, subheader, satisfying as fuck. That's this project. I'll put in the description below the kind of pressure washer I used, and also the kind of paint, and also the kind of paint sprayer, so that you guys know. I'm not like a brand loyalist to any of these things, but just so you know, these are the products that I've used, and I can say that they work. So I have paint sprayed before. At my old job, I ended up doing like, basically there was our big remodel, and I did like all of the paint spraying in that building. It was like literally like big, tall, like 30-40 foot ceilings, but basically like 60% of that place I painted with a paint sprayer. So I don't think there's, especially with a fence, I don't think there's a lot of like ways you could do it wrong necessarily. Doing a wall, you want to really make sure that you're keeping your wrist rigid and not doing this because you'll get uneven strokes, which I did some of when I did that big project, and I don't think it really made that big of a deal at the end of the day. Like, I looked at it every day for 4 or 5 years, and I never noticed it being streaky or anything. But that being said, there are tips and tricks that you'll read in your pamphlet about your paint sprayer, and that's one of them. Keep your wrist rigid, and you probably don't want to get closer than 4 inches, but I guarantee that I did because, with my fence anyway, because of just what a fence is, etc. I just know I did. Okay, and no one's gonna come along and be like, you're paint spraying that wrong. I mean, fuck off, okay? If someone does that to you, just be like, go, fuck off, go away. Second thing about paint spraying is you have to thin your paint, which it also tells you in your manual. And I had to be fairly aggressive with thinning it because this was barn and fence paint, or outbuilding and fence paint. So it's pretty thick. And it's also exterior. Obviously, if you're not using exterior paint, you're painting stuff outside, what are you doing, okay? Go back and watch my paint videos, okay? I did a whole thing about it. And believe me, I'm not just like talking out of my ass. I have painted things with interior paint, and it doesn't last. Okay, I literally have my window well covers that one of the first fixes, projects, whatever I did in this house is I built window well covers. They had to be custom because our window wells are so fucking huge, and I just painted them with whatever paint I had, just some green basic paint, and they flaked immediately. It was like within a year, and like paint was just flaking off. So I plan on taking off, I mean, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I just use exterior paint when you're gonna be outside, okay? Just come on. It is much more hardcore, higher VOCs, etc. So again, I ended up, because if you're paint spraying, you want to be wearing some kind of mask, probably some goggles. I did it on days, because I live in the Great Plains, when it was not windy, because otherwise I would just been like blasted in the face with paint constantly. Spraying inside, you're gonna have more of that because it's just closed quarters, but I didn't have a huge problem with it. I had to set up a barrier, obviously, because you don't want to spray paint things that you don't want to be painted. So I did some tests, and I realized, especially over here, that there was some decent, that paint was fucking flying. So I thought maybe it would be okay with just some sheets like on the ground, like some tarps and stuff, but it wasn't. So I'll actually end up pressure washing the paint away. I think that will work. We'll kind of see. Otherwise, it's just sidewalk. I don't fucking care about it. And eventually, like, it'll get scrubbed off and it'll be fine. But, so I had to rig up something. First of all, you could just get a partner. I wanted to do it that day, so I had to get smart. So I rigged up some PVC pipe that I just have, and then they're like electric fence posts. And then the PVC pipe goes on top of the electric fence posts, and then I taped a big like 10-foot tarp for painting around the PVC. And then the PVC could go on top of the rebar or the electric fence posts, and then I could move it down and it was a barrier. So if you were doing this and you didn't give a shit about anything on the other side of that fence, or if your pickets were really close together, you could probably get away with not needing something like this, but mine are not. So also I have stuff over here like my compost, like neighbors, etc. I don't want paint just flying all over the place. I imagine that wouldn't make anybody happy with me, and I totally understand. So I rigged this up. It totally worked. So that's something to really think about if you're going to be painting with a spray gun at all. I wasn't sure how it was going to go or how far of a reach my paint sprayer was going to get, because it's not like it's hooked up to a air compressor or anything. So I wasn't sure what the range on it would be. But it's pretty decent. Like I got, a good like 6-8 feet past my fence before I rigged up a tarp. So be aware. But like the ground and like weeds and dirt and stuff, like fuck you. I'm gonna spray the shit out of you. I'm not gonna put down tarps on the dirt. And maybe someone would say that's bad for the environment. And I would say, fucking fight me about it, okay? Third thing or fourth thing or whatever. Because you have to thin your paint, it will be a little bit more drippy. So I did have a brush and a roller because I decided that was probably the easiest way to deal with drips and also deal with all the edges of my fence posts, is to just use a roller. So or a brush or whatever, to deal with drips on all of my horizontal pieces and then do the edges, because it felt like a really big waste of paint to do the edges unless I'm being really clever about like the angle and everything. So I did do some of that. So pros of this project, it's satisfying as hell. It looks so good. It goes on. I love pressure washing. It's very satisfying. Painting it, 10 out of 10. Cons, it's kind of messy. And also it took much longer than I expected. I think I thought initially that I could knock this whole fence out, both sides, in like a day. And it took me probably a good hour to even get set up and figure out my paint sprayer, which I do always tend to underestimate how long that shit takes me. I kind of just like, I'm just going to do that. I just do it. And it doesn't go that way. Like you have to assemble it. And I had read the directions. I knew I had to thin my paint. But I think I just underestimated how long getting like set up and really figuring out like the tips and the attachments and stuff to it and like how I wanted to spray it exactly. So it has like different, you can spray horizontal, that your spray is this way, or it'll do circles. I changed it many times. The circles, it'll spray like in one area instead of like this way or this way. I used for the edges when I did do that. So, and that seemed like the most concentrated way of doing that. And I might, because I'll have to do one more day of this, I might end up doing more of that for the edges, because I am trying to avoid painting with a brush or a roller because it's time consuming and it's just not that exciting. But we'll see how it goes. But otherwise, yeah, the paint is probably the most expensive thing. Yeah, those are some tips and tricks. I think really paint spraying is easy as shit and anyone can do it. Just some very, very basic tips, keeping your arm more rigid so you're not doing this is probably number one. And then, just like test it on something. Like I just came out here and tested on my fence because I'm like, I don't care about this fence. Like what could possibly go wrong? I knew I had done it before, and that was in the interior big old walls that you would be able to tell if it was streaky and stuff, and like it was no big deal, it was fine. But if you're nervous about it, or you're doing like an interior room, which would be such a pain in the ass because you'd have to tape and tarp so many things, it sounds like a huge fucking time consuming thing. Just have at it, okay? Read the directions and then just go for it, okay? Like you're not gonna harm anything. You're gonna get that paint on there, and even if you have to kind of like some trial and error of what really works best for you and the project you're painting, you're gonna get there and the paint's gonna get on it. The only thing, like my big final tip, is wash all that shit. If you're going in for lunch or something, you're gonna take a break, take your sprayer off of the electronic part that makes power, words, what? And put it in water. I had a bucket of water out here, and when I would go and take a break, I would just take it apart, and then put it in the water, like just submerge it. And I did that overnight when I knew I was going to do it the next day, and that worked perfectly fine. And I would just run through the water through it, like by squeezing the trigger. Worked really, really well. So do that. Don't leave your sprayer like plugged in with all the paint in it. There's warnings in all the manuals and shit, but that's like, do not do that. You will ruin it. And that was like my fear, is that I was going to ruin this paint sprayer in between when I was getting set up and when I would stop and start and stuff. But it didn't seem like a problem. As the day wore on, I would maybe, in the tip of it, I would use the little, it comes with a little like cleaner thing. I would like put that through it because I'd get little pieces of dried paint, but it wasn't like stopping it from spraying. It would just spray a little bit funny. So end of the day, just dump it in water, just submerge it. The same with any of the utensils, the same with any of the little pieces you're using that come with it or whatever. Put it all in water and just leave it, and then come back the next day, dry it off, and then keep going. That's my final end tip. But otherwise, I mean, hell yeah. This fence looks so good. I'm really proud of, having fixed the pickets. It looked so janky for so long, and this really, really cleans it up. It's an old fence. My house is old. My property is old. We've got lots and lots of trees. So there's just certain things you just gotta like work around. Unless you're made of money, you're just gonna dump thousands of dollars into, I don't know, stupid shit like grass seed. Sorry, I think that's stupid. But this I think is a huge improvement for like basically under $100. Like paint wise, didn't even spend $100. I'm just being generous of under $100, painted it, finished it. I should have paint left over to do my chicken coop. I'm gonna paint that, as well as my window well covers, which I'll maybe do before and afters on that because it's just kind of a fun thing. I can't spray my chicken coop with where it's at because my chickens are just right there. They'll just get blasted with paint and it's just not a feasible setup. So yeah, anyway. Does anyone want to come and help me move my chicken coop? Because that would be great. Just kidding. So yeah, I mean, have at it, okay? It's the summer. Pressure wash and paint away. Go for it, man. Do it. 10 out of 10. Beth approved. It's idiot proof. It's not rocket science. I guarantee, like have some beers, have a bonfire. I don't know. Yeah, have some beers and paint your fucking fence, okay? Easy summer project. It's not labor intensive because otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. It's mostly just like hours, of having to do it. The pressure washing and the painting together. So, but I wasn't like exhausted. I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm done for the day. Probably because I'm 8 months pregnant. Just don't have quite the stamina for that, but this will probably be my last big project. I know I said my chicken coop was, but I guess it's not. This is my last big project, and then I might have to start doing less project things. It's mostly like a time thing that I have several other things that I need to be taking care of, getting cleaned up and getting prepared for, this. Okay, it's a pretty big deal. But yeah, I think smaller things I will try and keep kind of working on. Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it goes, okay? Everyone's got to take breaks, and you can only fill up your day with so many things. I hope you appreciate all my can-do, DIY, weird projects I do. Totally recommend. Just do it, okay? Just do it, okay? I promise you can. And if I can do it, and and I'm 8 months pregnant, I promise you can figure it out, okay? And you can just look things up on the internet if you have a question about what about this, or how do I thin paint, etc. So I appreciate the heck out of you guys. Thanks for being here and following along on my journey. So we'll keep it on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.